The cold, sterile hall of the Imperial Palace echoed with silence as Hana Kim stood motionless. Her husband, Jae-sung Park, the supreme ruler of the Krell planetary system, looked down at her with eyes that burned with disappointment and anger. Years of marriage had brought them nothing but emptiness. No child, no heir, no future for the royal bloodline. Hana's heart raced as Jae-sung's words cut through the air like sharp blades. "You have failed me," he declared, his voice steady and cruel. "A queen's primary duty is to continue the royal lineage. You have done nothing but disappoint our people." The court watched in hushed anticipation. Nobles and advisors stood like statues, their eyes fixed on the dramatic scene unfolding before them. Hana felt their judgment, their silent whispers, their collective disappointment. Her scientific background meant nothing in this moment. Her advanced degrees in xenobiology, her research publications, her intellectual achievements, all were meaningless compared to her inability to bear a child. The traditional expectations of their society crushed her spirit. Jae-sung's hand moved, signaling to the royal guards. "You are hereby stripped of your royal titles. From this moment you are no longer my queen." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Hana's elegant royal dress suddenly felt like a prison. The intricate golden embroidery, once a symbol of her status, now felt like chains binding her to her failure. She would be exiled, sent to a remote research outpost on the outer edges of their planetary system. Far from the glittering palace, far from the life she had known, far from any hope of redemption. As the guards approached, Hana didn't resist. Her training as a scientist had taught her to observe, to analyze, to understand. Even in this moment of profound personal destruction, her analytical mind was processing every detail. The journey to the research station was long and silent. Compact transport ships moved through the vast darkness of space, carrying her away from everything she had ever known. Outside the small window, distant stars seemed to mock her situation, endless, bright, full of potential, while she felt completely empty. The research outpost was nothing like the Grand Palace. Simple metal structures, advanced scientific equipment, and a view of a barren, rocky landscape greeted her. This would be her new world, a world of isolation, of scientific pursuit, of survival. Her personal quarters were functional. A sleeping pod, a research terminal, basic living facilities. Everything was designed for efficiency, not comfort. No luxuries, no reminders of her previous life. Just pure clinical functionality. Hana knew she had two choices. She could surrender to despair, or she could transform her pain into something meaningful. Her years of scientific training kicked in. Research would be her companion. Discovery would be her new purpose. Days turned into weeks. She immersed herself in xenobiological research, studying complex genetic structures of various alien species. Her work became her lifeline. Each experiment, each analysis, each research paper was a small rebellion against her circumstances. The outpost's communication systems were limited. News from the Imperial system was sparse. But Hana didn't care. She was building something of her own now, something that didn't depend on her ability to bear a child or maintain a royal status. Her colleagues at the research station were few, but respected her expertise. They saw her not as a disgraced royal, but as a brilliant scientist. Her reputation in scientific circles remained untarnished, perhaps even enhanced by her dedication. Little did Hana know that her exile was about to lead her to a discovery that would change everything. The universe had plans far more complex than the narrow expectations of her previous life. As the distant sun set over the rocky landscape, casting long shadows across the research station, Hana Kim continued her work. Alone, but not defeated. Exiled, but not broken. Her story was just beginning. The meteorite struck without warning, its impact sending tremors through the entire research station. Hana Kim was deep in her laboratory when the first vibrations shook her equipment. Alarms blared, red emergency lights flashing across the sterile white walls. She rushed outside, her protective suit quickly zipped up, scientific curiosity overwhelming any sense of personal fear. The landscape around the research station had transformed. A massive crater smoked and steamed, small fragments of rock and metal scattered across the rocky terrain. Something was different about this impact. The debris pattern didn't match typical meteorite landings. As she approached, her radiation detector began clicking rapidly, an unusual reading that made her pause. In the center of the crater lay a broken spacecraft, not a meteorite, not a natural object, a ship, badly damaged, its metal hull torn and twisted, smoke rising from multiple breaches. Hannah's scientific training kicked in immediately. Her first thought was survival. Was anyone alive inside? Carefully navigating the unstable ground, she approached the wreckage. Her trained eyes scanned for potential dangers, radiation leaks, structural instability, possible chemical contamination. The ship looked human-made, its design unlike any Krell technology she had studied. A faint sound caught her attention. Movement. Someone was alive. Pushing aside a damaged metal panel, she discovered a soldier, male, human, severely wounded. His combat suit was torn, revealing multiple critical injuries that would have killed most beings. But he was still breathing. Jun-Ho Lee. That was the name printed on his damaged identification tag. His body temperature was dropping. Multiple internal systems clearly compromised. Any other species would have died instantly from such extensive damage, but humans were different. Something about his genetic structure seemed unusual. Hannah's medical training merged with her scientific curiosity. She needed to move him quickly. The external environment was hostile, and his injuries required immediate stabilization. Using specialized equipment from her research station, she carefully transported him inside. Her medical bay was more a scientific research area than a traditional medical facility. Advanced scanning equipment mapped his internal systems. What she discovered fascinated her. His cellular regeneration was unlike anything she had ever seen. Wounds that would take months to heal were already showing signs of rapid recovery. Broken bones seemed to be realigning themselves. Damaged tissue was reconstructing at an impossible rate. For the first time since her exile, Hannah felt something she had almost forgotten: pure scientific excitement. Hours passed. She monitored his condition, taking extensive notes, running multiple analysis protocols. The human soldier remained unconscious, his body working to repair itself in ways that defied standard medical understanding. Who was he? What mission had brought him to this remote location? The questions burned in her mind, matching the intensity of her scientific curiosity. As night fell across the barren landscape, Hannah continued her observations. The research station's artificial lighting cast a soft glow over the unconscious soldier. His breathing was steady now, his body temperature stabilizing. Something told her this unexpected encounter would change everything, not just for her research but possibly for understanding between species. By midnight, subtle changes began happening. The soldier's eyes started to flicker. Faint muscle movements suggested he was approaching consciousness. Hannah prepared her, medical instruments, her heart racing with anticipation. She knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary medical case. This was a scientific discovery waiting to unfold. The human soldier was about to wake up in a world far from home, in a research station at the edge of an alien frontier, with a scientist who had been cast aside by her own people. Their unexpected encounter was just the beginning of a story that would reshape everything they understood about survival, resilience, and potential. As dawn approached, bringing soft light across the rocky landscape, Jun-Ho Lee's eyes opened, and everything would change. The research station hummed with quiet intensity. Jun-Ho Lee sat across from Hannah Kim, both studying complex genetic sequences displayed on multiple holographic screens. Days had turned into weeks since his unexpected arrival, and their collaboration had transformed from cautious interaction to intense scientific partnership. Jun-Ho's unique genetic structure fascinated Hannah. Human biology seemed to hold secrets that the Krell scientific community had never understood. His body's regenerative capabilities were far beyond anything she had previously studied. Look here. Jun-Ho pointed to a specific genetic marker. His finger traced a complex molecular pattern, that seemed to pulse with potential. This sequence, it's not just about healing, it's about adaptation. Hana's eyes widened. What he was suggesting was revolutionary. The human genetic code wasn't just a blueprint for survival, it was a dynamic system capable of rapid modification and improvement. For the Krell, reproduction was a strict, controlled process. Genetic lines were carefully managed, with little room for variation. Couples struggling with fertility faced social isolation and potential exile, exactly what had happened to Hana. But humans were different. Their genetic structure suggested something more fluid, more adaptable. Each challenge seemed to trigger potential genetic modifications that could be passed to future generations. Days of research turned into weeks. They worked together, sharing knowledge, challenging each other's assumptions. Junho spoke about human experiences, stories of survival, of adaptation, of pushing beyond perceived limitations. Hana listened, her scientific mind connecting these narratives to the genetic evidence before her. Their breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine genetic analysis, Hana discovered a modification technique that could potentially solve the Krell's reproductive challenges. The key wasn't in forcing reproduction, but in understanding genetic potential. It's not about controlling genetics, Junho explained. It's about creating environments where genetic potential can be explored. The research was delicate. Each discovery required careful verification, multiple tests, extensive documentation. They knew the implications were massive, not just for reproduction, but for understanding life itself. Their work remained secret. The research station was isolated, their communication with the outside world minimal. But they both understood the potential impact of their discovery. For Hana, this was more than scientific research. This was redemption. The very thing that had caused her exile, her inability to produce an heir, was now becoming her greatest scientific achievement. Junho's presence had changed everything. He wasn't just a patient or a research subject. He had become a partner, someone who understood the power of potential over predetermined limitations. Their genetic modification technique suggested something radical, that life could adapt, could change, could find new paths of survival that nobody had previously imagined. The Krell scientific community would be shocked. Their rigid understanding of genetics would be challenged. But Hana and Junho knew this was bigger than one species or one scientific perspective. As they worked, the research station became a crucible of discovery. Complex machines analyzed genetic sequences. Holographic displays showed intricate molecular dances. Two scientists from different worlds, united by curiosity and the pursuit of understanding. Outside, the rocky landscape remained unchanged. But inside this small research station, something extraordinary was happening. A scientific breakthrough that could reshape understanding of life, adaptation, and potential. Hana looked at Junho. He smiled, understanding passing between them without words. They had discovered something profound, something that would challenge everything their respective societies believed about genetics, reproduction, and survival. The universe, they were learning, was far more complex and beautiful than anyone had previously imagined. And they were at the center of a discovery that could change everything. As another cycle of the distant sun began, Hana and Junho continued their work. Quietly, carefully, brilliantly, waiting for the moment when their discovery would reshape scientific understanding forever. The communication signal broke through the research station's quiet atmosphere like a thunderbolt. Jae-sung Park's face appeared on the holographic screen, his expression a mixture of anger and calculated control. "Your research has come to our attention," he declared, his voice cold and precise. "You will return all documentation immediately. This is a royal command." Hana stood perfectly still. Beside her, Junho's hand moved subtly closer to her side, a gesture of silent support. They both knew this moment would come. The imperial system had been watching, waiting, calculating. Her research threatened everything the Krell understood about genetic reproduction. What she and Junho had discovered could revolutionize their entire societal structure, a technique that could solve reproductive challenges, break traditional genetic limitations, and challenge the very foundation of their royal lineage. 3 Imperial battleships appeared in the station's orbital tracking system. Their arrival was not a request. It was an invasion. Junho's military training activated instantly. He began securing critical research data, creating multiple backup systems. His fingers moved across communication panels, establishing encrypted channels that would protect their scientific breakthrough. "They cannot take this research," Hana said quietly. Her voice carried a strength she had never possessed in the royal court. Exile had transformed her from a defeated queen to a determined scientist. The first wave of Imperial guards arrived through teleportation systems, advanced combat suits, precision weapons, standard Imperial invasion protocol. They expected quick submission. They expected Hana to be the same woman who had been cast out years ago. They were wrong. Junho moved with precision. His human combat training combined with their research station's advanced scientific equipment created unexpected defensive strategies. Energy shields activated. Molecular disruptors emerged from hidden panels. The research station transformed from a scientific facility to a defensive stronghold. Hana's scientific mind became her greatest weapon. She understood the Imperial Guard's technological systems better than they understood themselves. Each defensive move was calculated, precise, backed by weeks of careful research and preparation. Imperial communication channels attempted to negotiate. Threats were made. Royal decrees were announced. But Hana and Junho had something more powerful: their scientific discovery and their mutual determination. "Your research threatens the royal genetic line," Jae-sung's holographic image proclaimed. "You will surrender immediately." Junho's response was simple. He uploaded a small segment of their research, just enough to demonstrate its potential. The implications were clear. This was not just about reproduction. This was about challenging an entire system of genetic control. The battle was not just physical, it was intellectual. A confrontation between an old rigid system and a new understanding of potential and adaptation. Imperial guards found themselves facing unexpected resistance. Scientific equipment became defensive systems. Molecular analysis tools transformed into precision weapons. Every inch of the research station had been prepared. Hana realized something profound during those moments. Her exile had not been a punishment. It had been preparation. Everything she had experienced had led her to this moment of scientific and personal rebellion. Junho fought with a combination of military precision and scientific strategy. His human adaptability proved more powerful than the Krell's rigid combat protocols. Each defensive move was unexpected, intelligent, transformative. Hours passed. The Imperial invasion became a complex dance of technology, strategy, and scientific potential. The research station stood as a beacon of resistance against a system that had tried to control and limit potential. As the distant sun began to set, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape, the confrontation reached its critical moment. Hana and Junho had protected their research. They had challenged an entire Imperial system. More importantly, they had proven that potential was not about predetermined limitations. It was about adaptability, courage, and the willingness to challenge existing understanding. The Imperial ships began to retreat. Their invasion had failed, but the real battle was just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was silent when Hana Kim walked in. Her research data displayed behind her, complex, revolutionary, undeniable. Years of exile had transformed her, from a defeated royal to a groundbreaking scientist. Junho stood beside her, not as a subordinate but as an equal partner. Their collaborative research had become more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a challenge to establish systems of genetic understanding. Representatives from multiple planetary systems watched carefully, some with curiosity, some with fear, some with hope. "Our research demonstrates that genetic potential is not about limitation," Hana began. Her voice was calm, confident, nothing like the uncertain queen she had once been. "It's about adaptation." She explained their discovery, a genetic modification technique that could help species overcome reproductive challenges. But more than that, a method of understanding genetic potential as a dynamic, evolving system. The Krell representatives looked uncomfortable. Jae-sung Park, watching from a distant communication panel, seemed to shrink with each explanation. The very system that had exiled Hana was now being dismantled by her scientific evidence. Junho presented military and scientific data supporting their research. Human adaptability wasn't just a biological characteristic. It was a philosophical approach to survival and growth. Their presentation revealed something profound. Genetic limitations were often more about cultural restrictions than actual biological constraints. Every species had potential. Every individual had the capacity to grow, to change, to become something more. The council members asked questions, complex, challenging questions designed to test the research's validity. But Hana and Junho were prepared. Each answer was precise, backed by extensive scientific documentation. As hours passed, something remarkable happened. The conversation transformed. What had begun as a formal presentation became a genuine exploration of scientific potential. Representatives from different planetary systems began sharing their own experiences, stories of genetic challenges, of reproductive difficulties, of societal limitations. Hana and Junho's research offered hope, where previously there had been only restriction. The imperial system that had rejected Hana began to crumble, not through violence, not through conflict, but through the power of scientific understanding. Her exile had been a gift. Removed from the rigid royal court, she had found the freedom to explore, to discover, to challenge existing understanding. The very thing that was meant to destroy her had become her greatest strength. Junho's presence had been crucial. His human perspective offered a different way of understanding potential. Adaptation wasn't about perfection. It was about continuous growth, about seeing challenges as opportunities. By the presentation's end, something extraordinary had happened. Hana was no longer seen as a disgraced royal. She was recognized as a leading scientific mind. Her research would be published, shared, studied across multiple planetary systems. The Galactic Council's final resolution was clear. Their research would receive full support. Funding would be provided. Collaborative research centers would be established. When the session concluded, Hana looked at Junho. No words were needed. Their journey from an unexpected encounter to this moment of scientific triumph was complete. Outside the council chambers, news was spreading. A scientific breakthrough that challenged everything previously understood about genetic potential. A story of redemption that went far beyond one individual's journey. Jae-sung Park, watching from a distant communication panel, realized something profound. The power to control was nothing compared to the power to understand. The rigid system he had maintained had been broken not by force but by scientific curiosity. As they left the council chambers, Hana and Junho knew their work was just beginning. This was not an ending. This was a new beginning. The universe, they had proven, was far more complex and beautiful than anyone had previously imagined, and they were at the center of a discovery that would change everything. Redemption, they had learned, was not about returning to what was lost. It was about creating something entirely new.